How's it going, Paratruthers? Welcome to another episode of Paratruth Reborn. This is a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the West Coast, and United Public Radio Network. My name is Justin, and today we're going to be doing a replay of an episode we did when we were Paratruth Radio entitled Humans Are From Mars. So we hope you enjoy, and I'll talk to you in just a little bit.
And today we're bringing a very fun topic, one that we haven't really discussed, but has been circling the social media. This idea pretty much came up from Justin, who received a TikTok from a friend, and we decided to run with it. And that question is whether or not humanity, or humans in general, actually came from Mars. Is Earth our natural home? We're about to find out. So I think without further ado, let's just jump on into it.
Okay, yeah. So, Cat Ward, you guys heard her on our Halloween episode with us, and she's been on
our worst episodes, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
But she sent me the video on TikTok, and I should tell her that Paratruth has a TikTok. I don't think she realizes it. But
she know what TikTok is exactly? I mean, I know she sent you the TikTok. Where you see that from somebody younger?
She's always commenting on my TikToks. Okay. She has somewhat of an idea.
She's like, yeah, that's what a clock does, right?
It's funny you say that because Shelly just mentioned the other day that she's too old for TikTok. And I'm like, yeah, there's people way older than you on TikTok. You're not too old for TikTok. Maybe when TikTok first started, yes, we were too old for TikTok. But so she sent this video. Unfortunately, I didn't take notes because there was some good information in there. That there was a scientist, cannot remember the name, but who speculated that humans are from Mars, and that's why humans today, as the years progress, humans are getting sicker and sicker. And these diseases, these viruses are affecting humans even more so than other beings on the planet. But it goes down to even science even further too, though, because everything that I've come across trying to do some research on it, the speculation is fragments from Mars, from some type of catastrophic event, blue chunks from Mars, and it would have brought life to Earth, and that's kind of how Earth life started here. But the way that they're talking about it isn't like humans, like you and I are humans. It's microscopic life.
Right.
So, after I watched the video, which shocking, I know, from the last time Erik and I talked about TikTok and watching videos and being chastised because I said I didn't have time to watch a 15-second video. So I finally did have time. So watching the video, I started really thinking about this. And I guess, what are some of your thoughts, or did you come across anything that even hinted at humans themselves, quote unquote humans, coming from Mars?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the only stuff that I found in regard to humans coming from Mars are pretty much, what I like to call back road websites. So these are websites that aren't, they don't have any grounding, right? They're not what I would call official, what's the word I'm looking for? I only keep thinking respected, but that's not the right term because they could be respected. But these are websites that just aren't politically well known. These are thrown on by some person somewhere who has no real scientific knowledge necessarily or anything like
Not
that.
reputable. Is that what you're thinking of? Reputable?
Reputable. That is the word I'm thinking of. So they're not reputable sources. They're not like the Smithsonian or BBC or some of these other places that we get some of our information from. So with that said, a lot of what I did find in regards to so I was just telling Justin at the beginning of the show that I don't talk at all during the day because I don't have a job in which I talk to people. So it's like when I get on here to talk, it's like there's dust in my throat and it gets clogged up as I'm trying to speak for the first time for the day. I'm sorry. um, but yeah, so a lot of the things that I saw was just coming from some of these websites that are more speculative or creating some sort of fantasy story based on what I was seeing. There was nothing real. There's no scientific evidence backing it up or anything like that. The most significant thing that I found was something you had already mentioned, and that is this idea that early on in the life of the planets, an asteroid struck Mars and basically threw up a bunch of dust and particles that attached to another piece of rock that made its way to Earth, crashed there, and then the bioorganisms kind of spread through the world and created life as we know it. Now, there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not that's possible, because how can it be that life didn't already exist here? For example, why would it have to come from another place? Well, reading articles on BBC.com and the Smithsonian, I found that early on in the life of Mars and Earth specifically, Earth was pretty much just a vast ocean. That's all it was, right? We know that. That's scientifically proven. There was no land. It was just water. Mars, on the other hand, had both oceans and land, much like Earth does today. So it had a higher potential of creating life because there was a place for life to kind of grow and exist on land. So when that happened, when the asteroid hit and spit everything up, by the time it reached Earth, land was already starting to form, at which point Mars was starting to basically disintegrate under the giant catastrophic event, as you had mentioned, and they kind of flip-flopped. So Earth became this perfect hospital place, right? Something like
Hospitable. Hospitable.
Hospitable. Guys, it's been years since I've taken English, okay? I know. So, when they landed or when the organisms landed here, there was a much greater chance for that life to kind of finally take on, especially because the Earth was warmer, closer to the sun, had everything going for it all of a sudden. It was younger. And then it just kind of flourished from there. Now, obviously, there's a lot of conspiracy regarding whether or not humanity literally existed on Mars first, like you and I, fully grown, full knowledge, living on Mars. There's rock structures that people like to point to, like the face of Mars. I'm sure you've seen that picture. It's very interesting. There's a lot of debate whether or not it's man-made, made by some sort of extraterrestrials, or if it's just a natural rock formation. There's no real clue, which is kind of weird to me, considering we've landed how many, vehicles on Mars and have yet to go check it out and give significant info as to what it is. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, I'm seeing a lot more evidence in the scientific side of it, in terms of these bioorganisms compared to actual humans or some sort of alien being, if you will, that originated from Mars and then came to Earth.
Right. Well, and in the video, they talk about, it really explains why humans are getting sick, even more so now as time goes on than early on, because more exposure to the radiation of the sun, being closer to the sun now, would explain the different things like cancer, some of the viruses that wouldn't have been on Mars are here. But, that part kind of evaporates a little when you think of if it's a microorganism that just came here, all of that would have originated on Mars because it's in a sense a part of Mars coming here, and if all of life originated on Mars, everything, including the viruses, everything would have originated on Mars too.
Well,
But
I mean, yes and no, because I mean, you have to consider the viruses kind of create themselves. They just kind of appear depending on various things. In fact, one big thing that has been commonly spoken about on NPR radio is that as we see more and more of the Arctic ice melting, there's a greater chance of new viruses becoming known to us because they're locked away in the ice. So that, of course, could be, as you said, viruses that came from Mars or somewhere else outside of space, or based on the biology of the Earth, the perfect, structure, heat, cold, all that stuff can just manifest its own kind of viruses or mutations of viruses. I hate to talk about COVID on here on the show again, but that's one thing that we see with viruses. It's constantly mutating, right? We have like 3 or 4 mutations now, and the flu has done the same thing. That common cold has done the same thing. One thing I do want to mention, though, because you said, one of the big things that we're seeing about people getting sick is because we're closer to the sun. There's greater potential for cancer because of microwaves and various types of UV light
exposure
from the sun.
Right.
Now we don't know. Well, I don't know, I should say, exactly what the atmosphere was like on Mars. I mean, if it was anything like Earth, then it was probably very similar. But if it wasn't, one thing I know is that currently Mars has virtually no atmosphere. And so the amount of UV rays that are penetrating through the atmosphere that is on Mars is significantly stronger than here on Earth, even though Earth is closer to the sun. So that is something to consider, because I feel like, actually, I read this article, who is by NBC News, and we'll talk about it a little more, but it's more so about Mars colonists, people who are going to go, leave Earth to go to Mars, and how those people over thousands of years may actually change in appearance and in the way that they act and all that, just in their own evolutionary right. So with that said, one of the things that they talk about is a peculiar pigmentation of the skin. There's actually 2 views on it. And the first one is that, who is it? It was a person by the name of Cabral said that because there's less light on Mars, and mind you, Mars is almost always cloudy, so you never get direct daylight. But because there's less light, they believe that it would be possible that the skin of humans thousands of years from now on Mars would become pale over time and their hair light toned. However, there was a second argument by a person named Solomon who says that the Martian atmosphere is thinner than Earth's, and the red planet has essentially no protective field, a magnetic field, and thus people living on Mars would be exposed to higher levels of cancer-causing radiation, even if they spent most of their lives indoors, and that pigmentation helps block the effects of radiation, and therefore the deeper the color, the better the protection, and therefore he thinks that people would become much darker skinned and darker hair on Mars than here on Earth. Even still, though, he said it's possible that life on Mars might yield people whose skin is pigmented by carotenoids rather than our usual pigment of melanin. Basically, carotenoids are the same molecules that give carrots their characteristics and color. And so there's a good chance that if people, spent thousands of years on Mars, their skin would actually turn bright orange. And they would just differentiate themselves from humanity in that way.
We actually do see that with people that eat a lot of carrots over an extended period of time, of course, that their skin start to get kind of an orange pigmentation. So that kind of makes sense.
With those people that are like in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who use fake tanning were too much.
Yeah, the spray tanning is not good. So something that I was thinking about with this, and not saying I buy into this or believe it. It was just a thought process that kind of started coming to me. I started thinking about the Bible and
Hmm.
how it talks about, creation to the end, and that maybe all of this that happened in the Bible actually had happened on Mars, and then we somehow were able to get here to Earth. So the Bible's already happened. Not saying that's true. I'm not even saying that I believe in it. It was just a thought process I started having. So Mars being dead now, we have came to the new Earth being Earth. So now we have a whole new history that's forming from it.
I mean, that's interesting, and it's certainly a possibility, I suppose. I mean, how many times have we heard that history repeats itself, right? And that's not just in the paranormal; that's just a general life
Right.
rule, I guess, that people have always taught us. So there is always that possibility, that every time one thing ends, it just restarts. That there really is no new "quote unquote" beginning. It's just the same thing at a different time. So I mean, but yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, we see a lot of stuff though within the scriptures that show like what people would consider extraterrestrial, right? The way they describe it, whether or not it is or isn't. I mean, I really think that the whole idea of God and the angels and extraterrestrials and aliens all coincide. They're all one and the same, and that's not to say that you know God is
An
a
alien.
alien or
Right.
reptilian or something like that. But he's not of this world. He's not of Earth, right? Neither are the angels. They belong to a whole different, whatever
Place of existence.
difference. Yeah, and so just an angel showing up or God showing up in the Bible is certainly an extraterrestrial event. And the way that people describe those events, they tend to humanize them. They explain them in the best way that they know how. Sometimes it's symbolic, sometimes it isn't, and it's not easy to tell which is which. Which is why you really have to read. You have to read the Hebrew scriptures. You need to read the Arabic, the Greek, all that in order to take everything into context. So, to me, a lot of it is just a really big mystery still.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I had thought about this too. Not just Mars, but what if humans came from a different planet, not necessarily Mars, and some of these cryptids that we see now also came from another planet. That's why we can't identify them in any way to a specific animal or animal type that we have here on Earth now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
I mean that's certainly possible. It's so hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea that there are not just our planet, but so many solar systems and galaxies and otherwise with planets in them, and we're the only ones that happen to exist, right? The only life form. That doesn't make sense.
right.
Especially with so many suns out there. But then why do we have these planets? And like the planets, clearly, if you look at them, you just Google our planets in our solar system, they're not just rocks, right? They're not just these boulders you see flying around. These are uh, beautiful pieces of art, really. Like I'm looking at Jupiter right now, and the marble coloring to it is phenomenal. Same with Neptune. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like there has to be more to it though than just simply being these structures that are there for us to look at and enjoy. Now, what their purpose is exactly, or was, or will be, who knows?
Right. Well, and a lot of scientists have speculated that a lot of the solar systems that we can see, like with the Hubble, um, are actually probably already dead because of light speed. Um, catching up to us. We're seeing several years ago compared to current time.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be one thing in and of itself, but also that would also make sense too, that maybe human life didn't originate on Earth. And here's my thought process on that. We've speculated for years about evolution, micro, macro evolution. What Darwin talked about was macro evolution. And still today, and you guys can tell me I'm wrong, that's fine, we still cannot find the exact missing link to link humans to apes. Yes, we are very related to apes in some way because DNA strands plus different traits, but not exact.
Well, we're also very related to pigs, even more so than apes.
Right. And so that really begs the question, if you look at the scriptures, obviously the scriptures say we were just put here. If you look at science will try and explain things, but they still can't say 100%, hey, we did evolve. Here is the exact chain of events that have brought us to this point. That the typical picture that you see, and maybe it was just a piece of artwork, not necessarily the actual evolution of man, but the basically chimpanzee that evolved into Cro-Magnon man and then now Homo sapien.
Right.
And, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you're speaking of is Darwinism. It's what we grew up with. That's what we grew up learning. And I can't tell you how many cars that I see on the road that have a little, what is it? It's like the fish that is, what is it doing? I forget what it's doing. But there's something, it's like I think it's a fish with legs, right? Little Darwin symbol. Which is, it's religion and science, man. It's so funny how petty they both are because, we see, I see these little fish with feet on them that's for Darwinism. But then I see these Christian symbols of the Christian fish, eating a small version of the Darwin fish. He's like, why? Anyway, you're right. They're regardless of how much science tries to push this idea of macroevolution, there's no significant evidence to prove that we developed from a fish. And it doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't make any sense at all. For a fish to just be like, oh, I'm going to hop onto the land and maybe I'll just keep breathing for years and years and years until evolution takes its, course. Fish weren't meant to breathe air. I mean, this is like a dolphin or something like that. And of course, we have reptilians like alligators and whatnot, but it's very different from what they're trying to claim. And we know that there's very different branches of humanity. That's a fact. And there was a point in which we branched off from the others, like the Neanderthals, for example. The modern Homo sapien once lived with Neanderthals, but the Neanderthals couldn't keep up, and the modern Homo sapien just continued to move forward. And we have humanity as is today, while all the others went extinct. Now, where is that difference? Like, where did it curve? We don't know. We don't know if it's evolution. We don't know if there are two different types of races that, eventually just started going off their own way, because it's kind of how life works, So, I don't know. It's, I definitely agree with you though. I don't think, I don't believe in macroevolution. So microevolution is different. And right now I think that's what we have most of the evidence for.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, going back to the whole Mars thing, it seeing the video and thinking about it, I had already heard the theory to begin with, but it was hard to watch it and then start getting these other things, thinking about these other things about it, and not being like completely brain fried from going down these different avenues too, because it's hard to think about, because as humans, we're taught that we come from here, we come from Earth. So it's a completely different mindset.
So one thing that has been kind of confusing, because over the years we have been taught, at least I've been taught, that the Earth is moving closer to the sun.
Mm.
I also just learned that the Earth is actually moving further away from the sun. You can find both of these online, and I don't know which is true. Of course, we also learned that the sun is growing, getting bigger, getting to that point where one day it's going to just implode, right? Become that white dwarf and snuff everything out. So with that said, I mean, it can go either way. So I'm just going to choose one. And if at this very moment Earth is moving further away, it would make sense that every other planet is slowly moving further from the sun as well. So I feel like it's highly possible that each of these planets, depending on how you look at it, there's no scientific evidence here. This is just a theory, is that life had existed on each and every one of these planets at one point throughout time. And they all hit that zone that we're in right now in Earth. So Neptune was once where Earth was. There was life. It moved further and further away over billions of years. Uranus, right where Earth was, created life. It moved further and further away. That died out. And we just see this progression over and over and over and over. And if we originated from Mars, it's possible that when Mars was where Earth is today, it too was capable of sustaining life. And as it moved further away, that life, in the terms of Malcolm from Jurassic Park, found a way, right? Life finds a way. And so it traversed over to Earth, or just a whole new organism came into existence once Earth hit this prime spot. Because we know that Earth, where we're located, is a prime spot for life. There's no evidence that there was any life prior in any of the other planets closer to the sun or further away. But what if there was? We just can't find it yet because billions of years.
Right. Well, there's nothing to indicate that there's not life there now either, except for like Mars has no major atmosphere and no real water except for maybe underground. They've said that they have kind of discovered water underground on Mars, and even the polar caps. There's also people that have speculated that there are these tiny beings on Mars. This came out like years and years ago. There was a guy, he had a Facebook page and he was posting regularly. Not sure what happened that he finally stopped, but he was posting pictures from the rover.
I'll tell you what happened.
Government got him? Yeah.
Somebody, he's posting the wrong pictures.
Right. Well, he was posting these pictures of, they were just like black figures, and everybody wanted to speculate what it was, or that NASA had somehow blacked out something that was there. Not saying that they wouldn't have, because they possibly actually could have, but they were showing these images of supposed small humanoid beings there, and then there have been talk about pyramid type structures that supposedly were caught on camera too. But scientifically, as of now, humans still don't know if there's even life in our current solar system. You brought up the whole, Earth moving away from the sun or closer to the sun. But even in school, I honestly don't know now compared to when we were kids, but we were always taught that we basically have like a circular orbit around the sun. And current models now actually kind of show it more as a spiral, because the sun is constantly moving in space as well towards the giant black hole that is in the middle of our galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy. So it's constantly moving. So we're constantly moving. So it's more of a spiral, not necessarily a constant circular movement around the sun. So, yeah, things are being constantly changed from when we were kids learning this stuff.
I know. Science is right about everything, that they keep changing their mind on what they want people to learn, because it's, I'm not going to say it, but you know what? Science.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. Don't get me wrong. Religion's no better.
No.
I'm just generally speaking, though, everyone wants. I think that's the one thing that it's always been a bother to me, that depending on your faith, your religion, there's various branches of those religions typically. And so there's many different beliefs. Nobody really knows what right, what isn't, etc., at least in terms of history and whatnot. Science is the exact same way. Depending on who you're talking to, there's different beliefs. Nobody walks in with an open mind. They might say that they do, but they already have an idea of what they want to believe. And regardless of how much they think they're being open-minded, they're subconsciously going to manipulate the evidence to point toward their belief in many cases. What I think is interesting is, science always states something as a fact when they believe it to be a fact, and then later find out that they were wrong. And now they change it. And it's like, oh no, this is the truth, which is ridiculous, because it's like, okay, it's like crying wolf. This is the truth. Oh wait, no, that was wrong years ago. This is the truth now. Oh wait, no, that's not right either. There has to be a point where science comes out and says, in our current model of what we know, this is what we believe. This may change in the next 10 to 20 years as more evidence comes forth. But they don't do that, because many people within science is very prideful about the science. And we know a couple of people like that, even within our own family, who are 100% argumentative over the science and the lack of anything outside of it, whether that be spiritual or intelligent creatures of some sort, not of our Earth.
Right. Well, and I mean, science doesn't want to say, we haven't gotten to the point that we know all of this for a fact, but like you said, why can't we just say, as of science that we have discovered for now, we are confident in saying that this is what things are. Yeah. Instead, we just want to say this is fact.
Yeah. Well,
don't worry about all the things we've said in the past. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
This is fact.
It's not even that either. It's like, whether it's something that you're reading in a book or learning or watching something on TV, NPR, there's scientists who come on NPR regularly. When they're hit with the question, regardless of what that question is, if it's a question that they don't know the answer to, they beat around the bush and they circle and come back to a statement that they already previously made that has nothing to do with the question that was asked. And that's because for some reason, scientists, or not all, but many scientists, have a difficulty saying that they don't know. Because they're know-it-alls. They want to be know-it-alls. They want to be, oh no, this is fact. You're right. They're big-headed. But it'd be nice to it's nice, in my opinion, when someone, scientist or otherwise, who's a specialist, who knows that there are facts, and those facts aren't always 100%, legitimate, where they can come up from a question and be like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know that answer. There's not enough scientific evidence to say that it's, true, but I can't say that it's not true because there's no evidence. They don't do that though. They just kind of beat around the bush.
Right. Well, I think that's pretty much all we can say. What are some of your final thoughts on humans coming from Earth or from Mars?
Well, so here's something that I wanted to go into, and the theories that I came across are oddly in alignment with the past of what we know of humanity, the Neanderthals, for example. So I was doing my research, and I had already mentioned one thing. I talked about the skin pigmentation earlier. If humans were to go to Mars and be there for thousands of years, there's a chance that their skin would start to change the color of their skin to help protect them from the sun.
Right.
Or lack thereof. Well, that's not the only difference. Something else that is speculated is that as humans spend more time on Mars, because of the lack of gravity, there's a higher potential that the skeletons of humans will become larger. They'll become bigger. The bones become more protruded in the forehead, especially. Think of that. Neanderthal has a bigger brow. It's believed that because of the less gravity, they'll be able to take an evolutionary step forward because the bones will have to be, they won't have gravity weighing down on them. So they'll have more room to grow. But also, because there's no gravity, meaning the bones themselves, like here on Earth, when we walk around, just walking with against gravity, pushing against gravity. When you think of weightlifting, you're pushing against gravity, really. You're building, you're building bone stability, bone strength. The bone's getting thicker, it's getting stronger. On Mars, or a place that doesn't have gravity or as much gravity, you're not going to have that same resistance. So the bones will get bigger, and they'll have to in order to protect the bone from fractures. So when you think about that, and you think about the Neanderthals and early humanity and the other branches of early humans, they were in some cases bigger. In some cases, their heads are larger, which is a big thing here, especially according to the theory that women, especially on Mars, will have larger heads than they do here on Earth. Babies that they have, they likely won't be able to have a regular birth. They'll have to have C-sections on Mars because the bone structure of babies will be much larger. And therefore, doing a C-section, the head will be bigger. And that's something that they're already seeing around here on Earth, is that women who have C-sections, the child tends to have a larger head because it doesn't have to squeeze through,
Right.
Make this about a health channel, but, so that's something to consider, because it's like, okay, if these, future humans are going to start to change and their skeletons are going to start making them look like early humans were here on Earth, well, that makes me think that maybe, early humans might have come from, if not Mars, a place that had less gravity,
right?
Allowed the bigger bone structure. Another thing that I wanted to mention, which has nothing to do with this, but it does have a lot to do with what we know about alien technology and early technology. Think of the myths behind Atlantis, right? The lost city of Atlantis. Think of the pyramids, how for years people said there had to be some sort of technological advancement in Egypt, early Egypt, in order to make the pyramids the way that they were. Well, according to this article on CNBC, I gotta find it. Here we go. This guy named Solomon said that generally speaking, about the changing appearance of Mars colonists, that's basically impossible to say whether or not they will necessarily look different, but what will likely be different is the technology that they use. They ended up saying that people on Mars will probably be aggressive in genetic engineering and self-modification, basically body part and organ enhancement and or replacement, to the extent of embedding various monitoring and repair devices and taking a cyborg-like path. This will be a very technology-forward cohort, advancing far behind what we currently know here on Earth. On top of that, as they spend more time separated from us and they distance themselves in terms of their humanity, there's a likely chance that their dialect will change as well. And there will be a point in which we don't recognize them as being human, even though they are. So now this jumps to other aspects of everything we've talked about over the years in terms of to extraterrestrials and technologies. I know we've talked about, like, did humans come from, like, are aliens, and I'm talking about, all the various types of aliens that we know in outer space or believe, how maybe they are future versions of ourselves. And here we see, in a theoretical, science-based opinion, that, yeah, if humans were to leave Earth and go somewhere for hundreds, thousands, millions of years, whatever, there's going to be significant changes to their bodies, to their minds, to their dialect, to their technology. So it's all kind of to me, it all comes around full circle. It's very intriguing.
Yeah, for sure. And that opens up a whole other can of worms. Well, and how many times that have we seen as of recent that the UFO, you've even brought this up about, like, how UFOs are possibly portals, but I've heard this theory very recently from several different people or sources saying that the UFOs that you're seeing aren't extraterrestrial. They're humans from the past coming to check on us. Or, I'm sorry, humans from the future coming to check on us in the past.
Which gives us this idea of time travel.
Right. And again, that opens up a whole other can of worms as well. But
maybe we should just turn this into a series, this episode. Talk about these other two things that open up cans of worms next week and the week after.
Now we not only do we have the over the campfire, down the rabbit hole, now we have the can of worms. See?
Well, I mean, that doesn't have to be a thing, but we can easily continue on with this discussion instead of putting it off for months on end.
Oh yeah.
Hey, remember a few months back when we were talking about this? Well, let's talk about time travel, and let's talk about, all these other aliens actually being human, future versions of humans.
Yeah. Yeah, we can absolutely continue on next week. I guess personally, I don't know what to think about the whole humans coming from Mars thing. We have that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It does make me question a lot that humans aren't from Earth. And that goes well beyond just speculating the whole Mars thing, but it does bring up a lot of interesting thoughts. And do I believe it? I believe it's possible. Can I say with 100% certainty? Not really. But what are your kind of some of your final thoughts about the whole Mars thing?
I mean, I just think, aside from what I've already stated, I feel like right now my thought is leaning towards the possibility that there is a bioorganism, that jetted from Mars. If any life came from Mars at all, that would be it. It would be
right.
That science-backed.
Micro, not macro,
but again,
like we talked about.
Right. But, even that, though, it's still speculation. It's just theory. There's no proof until they finally found Mars that theory is just that, a theory. So until we see some solidified evidence, as of right now, I would say that life just simply started on Earth, because I feel like Mars and Earth they're very similar.
They're sister
general,
planets,
but
yeah.
even more so billions of years ago. And, it's kind of like, the strong survives, right? And Earth just happened to be in that perfect little spot where it was able to kind of thrive and become what we know it today, whereas Mars did not. And it's just all by chance, I suppose. But you know what? I'm not a scientist, and I'm okay to say I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're not a scientist as in strictly educated scientist. You use scientific method. So in a sense, you're a scientist.
Well, okay. I mean, it's a whole other can of worms. Let's do that on week 4. We'll talk about that.
All right. All right, folks. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Paratruth Reborn of Humans Are From Mars. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, no matter where you're listening and watching. Again, this has been a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the West Coast, and United Public Radio Network. We got a lot of great shows coming up for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy everything that's coming. But until next week, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin. Talk to you guys later.